Thank you very much, sir. Today we want to talk about the rumored deployment of Zimbabwe soldiers to Mozambique. Have you heard about it?
Yes, I've heard about that rumor. I've been on it and trying to understand exactly what is going on with our president and the government.
Okay, is it a good idea to deploy soldiers to Mozambique?
That's a very tricky one, Honorable Gambakwe. I think the first port of call is to understand that everything that transpires on our political spectrum in Zimbabwe, it has to be constitutionally backed. We have to keep on checking balances and checks to see if we are within our constitution. So if I can quickly go to our constitution, you know, in our constitution, it is guaranteed, it is allowed for a head of state to deploy the National Defense Forces to go and intervene, or maybe to go and help insurgents in another sovereign state. But we must also understand that before that is given on, there is need for the head of state to be going to the parliament and to get a two-thirds majority to agree on that move. And as far as I'm concerned, that has not been done by our parliament. They didn't give a green light for the person of Mnangagwa to be able to deploy the National Defense Forces in Mozambique, in that particular region of Cabo Delgado. So it's not an informed decision from the perspective of the parliament.
Okay, what interests is Zimbabwe protecting in the current deployment in Mozambique?
There are a number of reasons. If I look at it with the laser jet lenses, I can only say it's nothing but total greed on the part of Mnangagwa, because we know for a fact that whatever proceeds that are going to come from this adventure will never benefit the people of Zimbabwe. We have seen it in DRC, where you know, the government had to send troops and fight there in DRC, but there is nothing that came out of it in terms of progressing our own social infrastructure. It was just a war which was a very uninformed war. So there is nothing that we should expect from this intervention of the National Defense Forces of Zimbabwe in the Cabo Delgado region in Mozambique. If anything that is going to come out of it are just body bags of our brothers and sisters, and we are going to have, you know, so many families crying about it, but with nothing in return.
Okay. So early in the 80s, Zimbabwe was involved in another adventure in Mozambique, protecting the Beira pipeline. Did Zimbabwe get anything out of that? Was there any benefit from that war?
Zimbabwe as a country has never been benefiting from any involvement of its citizens or its soldiers in any battle or any conflict on the face of the planet, except that the leaders of our government have been benefiting precisely, you know, in their own pockets, not in the national fiscus. So we should not see anything coming out of this, because that Beira corridor, the protection of that line has never produced anything. We have not heard anything from the parliament, from the government, any amount of money amassed from the proceeds of that movement there. But what we must also understand at this particular moment, Mr. Gambakwe, is to factor in the timing of deploying soldiers. Is it in line? Is it falling par with the current political and social, economic and health reality in Zimbabwe? Because one has to be very pragmatic. Is it the correct thing to do, given the fact that right now Zimbabwe and all other nations under the sun, we are under siege by the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID-19. So is it a good move on the part of Emmerson Mnangagwa to be taking such a risky decision? The answer is totally no. It is brutal in its nature, it is criminal, and it is treasonous, if I can put it that way.
Okay, then we've got the regional body like the SADC and the AU. What is their role in a situation like this? If there's a terrorist organization in Mozambique, should Zimbabwe be going in alone, or should they be waiting for the regional response?
There are two entities there. The first entity is that Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. It may seek the approval of SADC, or it may decide to go solely alone. But the consequences that comes after is the question whether it's actually sustainable, or is it a good idea to be exploring such adventures. Talking about the second entity, the SADC region, Southern African Development Coordination team, they can actually assign a number of countries to go and intervene. You know, we have known and we have seen what SADC stands for. It's merely a body that tries and stabilize peace on a negotiation basis, peacekeeping basis, you know, trucks painted in white and a couple of guys with AK-47s, but not a typical combat that can stop a war. We also need to factor in the fact that Mnangagwa is going there not under the auspice of SADC, but solely as an entity, as Zimbabwe alone, which is a very dangerous undertaking. I say so because you need to understand who is he fighting in the Cabo Delgado region in Mozambique. He is not fighting Renamo only. He is fighting Renamo, but there is also the president of Renamo affiliate, which is ISIS. Now, what we have to understand is the moment you talk about ISIS, you are at the same time talking about ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. You're talking of ISIL. Once you mention ISIL, then you are also talking about the sister affiliates of ISIL, which is you know, the Taliban and the Boko Haram and the Al-Shabaab of Somalia. So you must understand that is the problem, or that is the scaffold which Mnangagwa is trying to provoke, or has already provoked. So you must understand the type of insurgents that comes from these jihadists. Are we in a position financially to be sustaining a war against these people? Because we have seen what they do. If you intervene where they are actually involved, they will come back and attack. We have seen that remember, there was a mall that got destroyed in Kenya because apparently the Kenyan government had something to do there, I think in Spain, if I can't remember, Spain or Italy, where they were involved, where they were not wanted, where these jihadists were trying to settle their own dispute among those concerned people. And Kenya intervened, and they retaliated by bombing and destroying infrastructure in Kenya, and several hundreds were injured and killed. You understand? So we are in the same predicament. We have to ask our question, is this the government that we can trust? You understand? I don't think if you're going to carry out a survey within the electorate, within the people of Zimbabwe, you see the people, or you have people who are actually in agreement to this move. There is a serious lag. There is the serious lag between the Zimbabwean population and the government. You know, that social contract is not blue. That is the question. And that is the problem that we have. There is no social contract between our government and the electorate. We don't trust our government. And inversely, the government does not trust us. That is the big challenge that we have. So that war is not sustainable. That war can never be justified. If anything, it's a serious display of arrogance and foolishness.
Right, Mr. Brian Mubvumbi, I think you've clearly explained the situation. You've said that this war and this deployment has not been approved by Parliament, and that it will probably backfire on Mnangagwa. So if you were in power, if you're in office, what would you have done in this particular case?
In this particular case, at this moment, what we would have seek to do is to erect nets to mitigate the current scourge and the ravages that coronavirus has imposed on our people. That is, would consider, concentrating the small and dwindling fiscus that we have to combat the spread of coronavirus, and to actually maybe offer deferred taxes and to try and minimize the ravages of COVID-19. If at all Mnangagwa was feeling goosebumps as to he cannot wait to get whatever from his involvement in the Cabo Delgado region, he would have sent, or I'm saying I would have sent, if I was him, I would have sent a small delegation to go and negotiate on peace basis. A small contingent, not to send the national defense forces to go and intervene, but I would have sent quite a small contingent of personnel to go and negotiate the peace between Renamo and the insurgents, that is the ISIS, because that's what a good leader does. Before you pick up ammunition, before you take a side, you need to go and understand and discuss. That's why you have seen even America, great as it is, they had to consider going to North Korea and discussed with the president there. Now they're at peace, when actually few months back, they were almost on the verge of, undertaking a very serious war. So negotiations is what we would have done if we were DRP at play, according to this insurgents that has taken place to our neighbors. We wouldn't leave them out in the cold, but we would first pursue a peaceful way to solve those discrepancies and difference between Renamo and Frelimo, the Front for the Liberation of Mozambique. So I would consider sending people to go and discuss on it, verbally, other than picking up ammunition.
Right, Mr. Brian Mubvumbi from Democracy Restoration Party, thank you very much for joining me again today. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
Yeah, I want to quickly say we must go with the flow. It's very difficult for us to get it right when our leaders are riding against they are riding against the wave. You need to follow the wave, because what we have to understand is, take for example, countries like Britain, the United Kingdom, and America, all those superpowers. They've actually quarantined and they've stopped anything. We have seen exchange of prisoners of war in America. The Taliban releasing Americans and Americans releasing the Taliban because of COVID-19. That's how dangerous it is. So we need to understand that the talk of the moment is to preserve life in Zimbabwe more than anything. So what is happening is totally unacceptable. So this is one reason why people should forego the thought that one day we will have ZANU-PF, producing leaders that can take us out of this political holocaust and economic holocaust towards Canaan. It's not going to happen.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Brian Mubvumbi. I'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. Bless your listeners too.